grandsons, and don't be surprised to see more grandchildren in the future. So we've got two generations. We've got two generations there. Well, three, counting me and Barb. But you can see a very enthusiastic crowd.
Definitely. So let's talk about vineyards.
All right. As I mentioned, we have vineyards both on the Naramata Bench and then in the very south corner of the Okanagan, up against the U.S. border and Anarchist Mountain. So that's the very hottest area. Now, when we decided to plant vineyards, and all our 140 acres, we've planted ourselves. We have not bought any vineyards. We've planted raw land that used to be in orchards and planted vineyards, because we found that quite often the varieties that were in vineyards were not well suited to that area. So if you think of the Osoyoos and the heat they get there, you can imagine that Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Syrah, Cabernet Franc, Viognier, all these varietals that love heat, we grow down there. Naramata Bench, because of the cooling effect of the lake, is much milder than Osoyoos. And so we grow grapes there. And then, of course, I think Wine Club members know our big grape, which is Pinot Gris. We have about 50 acres of Pinot Gris, all grown on the Naramata Bench. And my son has a block on the Skaha Bench. But again, you've got milder temperatures, you have more rainfall, the soils are different. So they're quite different terroirs. And we did that on purpose. You know, I tell people all the time, hey, listen, certain varieties God made to grow in different parts of the Okanagan because we have such a diverse climate. And why fight what God wants us to do?
I think that's a perfect, nature is pretty closely connected with its own mind and its own force and its own devices. And to get in tune with that certainly sets it apart, doesn't it? Sets you apart.
And the other thing I would mention is that the Okanagan Valley, if this lake wasn't here, you wouldn't be growing anything. It would be too cold in the winter, and it would be an extreme desert. But it's the lake that makes all this possible. And the minute you move away from the lakes, you get places like Walla Walla, Washington, or areas like Kamloops, where they do get extremes, and farming is very, very difficult, and they have to use special techniques, etc.
It's a beautiful picture. We want to be in the Okanagan. Some of us already are. Looking forward to summer coming. The winery is open year-round. If people are interested in wine tasting coming up, reservations are required, but the view continues to inspire. So Stefan Arnason, Stefan's career started in fermentation. I thought that was a very lovely statement. What that really meant for everybody who knows a little bit about winemaking is that a lot of beer goes into making wine, and fermentation actually relates to beer. However, inspiration happened for Stefan, and he happily joined the Hollers in 2007. Stefan, if you want to share a little bit about what we're looking at here and your thoughts about Naramata Bench and the vineyards that you're.
Yeah, actually, funny enough, Barb, I just was on your website and I noticed, well, you were mentioning Liberty Wine Merchants, and I was in Liberty Point Grey in the early 2000s myself, actually. Yeah, that's
inspiration.
crazy.
Inspiration for everyone. Yes, if anybody would like to work in wine, that's a very good place to start.
That's a good company. They're a very good company. But yeah, no, Tony inherited me in 2008, actually. I was brought on board with the former ownership. And luckily, have been here ever since. So yeah, it's been great. What we're looking at here, actually, this is from our home winery vineyard, Munson Mountain. This is Pinot Gris, and it normally isn't that bald. They've removed all the leaves there so that it's easier for the pickers. So, and you can sort of see the nets have been lifted up. But that goes to our Munson Mountain Pinot Gris. A small portion. You can see, look at the purple skin of it too. It really picks up, it has a lot of color. And as we get into
now,
the Pinot
Stefan, I'm
Gris,
sorry to interrupt, but we have one of our first
Yep.
questions.
Oh, okay.
We have a question from Karen, and she's wondering how many blocks and how many separate microclimates are currently planted.
Wow, that's a goodie.
That's a specific one.
That's a goodie.
And are any blocks currently not under production? So I'll let you handle that.
Currently, everything we just replanted. We had a block of Syrah that died. That was fallow for about, I think, 3 years, Tony. But that's now planted to Petit Verdot. Off the top of my head, I believe we're 24, 25 different sub blocks of Pinot Gris. Mostly on the Naramata Bench. There is some variation from what we consider above Naramata Road and below Naramata Road. You have some heavier sort of lake bottom soils below Naramata Road. It gets a little more gravelly as you go higher. And then one very small block of Pinot Gris and a Soyuz, which, well, quite frankly, doesn't make super great Pinot Gris, but it's a tiny amount that normally goes to our monster lineup.
That was one of our mistakes in planting.
Yeah. Yeah, it can, in a good vintage in 2016, it was delicious. It needs a sort of a cooler vintage to be good. Here we've just got a couple little pictures here. On the left is some Pinot Gris. Again, look at that color on the skins. It's hard to see in a vineyard. You would think that's a black grape in a vineyard, but that's a white wine. If you leave it on the skins too long, that's where you pick up that big orange color, which we don't strive for ourselves, except for a very, very small production that goes to our restaurant. And look on the right here, there's an old school hydrometer, and mercury filled, where we have to keep those wrapped up pretty tightly now. We don't use those anymore. We have some fancier equipment, and this is what you would use to check your sugars during fermentation or at harvest to quantify exactly how much sugar you have in the grapes, which is going to give you an approximation on your final alcohol.
How was the harvest for 2020? How did it go for you?
Oh, super consistent. Yeah, it was, I would say, a pretty average Okanagan season. We were frozen out in late October, which really just meant that it drops all the leaves off of the vines. And at that point, you're basically done your ripening. So you just move through your blocks and pick what's most important first or most at risk. Yeah, good. Yeah, into Pinot Gris here. If we move on to Pinot Gris.
So this is the beginning. This is the beginning of our wine tasting. So I hope everybody has something in their glass and they continue to just enjoy. Because now we're going to talk the specifics of the bottles, and these are the bottles that were part of the pack that was shipped. So, all right, take it away.
Okay, I think everyone should just get a little bit of that into them. There's a comment there. Is it possible to visit the vineyards in a Soyuz? Yes, absolutely. Tony's son Matt would be delighted to take people around. So Pinot Gris has been Poplar Grove's go-to wine now for over a decade. And I have to show you this because one of our participants is also a staff member, and she dug this. I don't know if you can see that. This is a 2010 Pinot Gris.
Wow.
Out of our library. Very fun, not bad. I would have drunk it about 5-6 years ago. Absolutely, but it's absolutely drinkable. Pinot Gris, now we've been growing that for years and years, and luckily the Holler family have been planting Gris up here, making sure that we can control our fruit supply. Now, as you can see from the graphic, we're up to about 11,000 cases now, which is, it's a challenge, but you can see here, I'm just going to show you real quick. This is our tank room, and at the very back there are the big tanks. So we've got a 45,000 liter tank at the very back with a 37 and a 23 just next to it. So those actually are currently full of more 2020 Pinot Gris, which we still have to bottle. This is a grape, and Tony will back me up on this, that it's prone to rot. It's not a difficult grape to grow, but you have to be careful in the vineyard. And yeah, so we typically hang our Pinot Gris longer than a lot of our neighbors do, because in order to get those ripe tropical flavors where I think of the stone fruit and pear, a little bit of peach there, you can't watch your sugars. You have to just sample based on grape flavor. It's the only way. And then when we make it, we do a lot of work extracting those flavors from the skins of the grape. The pulp of the grape has no flavor. It's just sugar, water, and acid, or very little flavor. So you have to, after destemming that fruit, you have to soak it to extract all that goodness. So through harvest, we call it the Pinot Gris tsunami that comes in usually early October. And it's just absolutely tons and literally tons and tons and tons of Pinot Gris that we process, very long days. But when you're done with it, it's all worth it.
Sounds delicious. I think working at Legacy Liquor Store, which I at the time was, BC's #1 liquor store for volume out in the private sector. But Poplar Grove Pinot Gris had a space in the shelf, in the fridge, as well as on the shelf, where the wines were, just because it was so popular, we could hardly keep it in stock. So it's just that popular. And it's a kudos to you for making a wine that people love to drink. I think that's really what this is about. This is a very easy sipper, goes with lots, including the patio and friends, which we all like to have around. So
and the price point, when I picked it up at the liquor store today, $19.99. I had to reach back. It was literally flying off the shelf. I took a picture. I had to pull the bottles forward. So yeah, $19.99 for a really, really good Okanagan, anywhere in the world wine is a great price. So thanks for keeping it reasonable for us.
Well, that comes from Tony. Tony wants to make sure that our wines are available and affordable.
Yeah.
And speaking of availability, I have a question here. Are you distributing in Alberta at all? Tracy would like to know.
Absolutely. And I don't know if the 2020 is there yet though, but absolutely our wines are in Alberta.
And how about Manitoba? We had a write-in from Marlene.
A small amount still, I think. If Lori Barnes is on there, she can message us and tell us where it is. Only at the wine club. There we go. Yeah, so Manitoba currently is only through the wine club. I think I felt her kick me at the same time.
Poor Manitoba. I feel so sorry for Manitoba.
We love Manitoba. We love Saskatchewan. We love Alberta. The West is just a wonderful place to celebrate wine. I mean, how diverse are we?
But we can ship directly to people's doorsteps in Manitoba. That's all legal.
Yeah.
With our arcane alcohol legislation.
Let's hope that changes soon. Now let's talk a little bit, look at this pairing. We've got Pinot Gris. So there is a fabulous restaurant at Poplar Grove, which I had the lovely pleasure of dining in last summer. Even during COVID, we managed to make it for at least a couple hours. And I did not have the Dungeness crab. However, if I had known, I would have. But yeah, this looks like a perfect pairing. Any thoughts? Any thoughts, Stefan?
Oh, me.
Well, sure. Or Tony?
Tony's. I've barely been to the restaurant since we reopened. Honestly, I've been too busy.
I'll make a quick comment. This is a really nice pairing, and I've had this dish, and I've had Pinot Gris with it. In fairness, Pinot Gris goes with a lot of different dishes, and you can drink it anytime, and you can drink it without food. More Pinot Gris gets consumed on our patio with no food than as a food wine, because it's so you know, so lovely just to drink on a nice warm afternoon on the patio, looking out over the lake. Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for balance that this wine represents, and that is there's just a real harmony of flavors, acidity, alcohol, and structure, which makes this a very pleasing wine. So
Now, Michael wants to know, Tony, what year was your best vintage since you've taken over the winery?
You know,
Or that could be Stefan or a combination of both.
so
Or Barb.
you know, it's always hard to say what was the best vintage, because obviously we strive to make every vintage, you know, the best vintage. Now, the problem you have though is the way you manage the vintage in the farm is, of course, critical to the success of the fruit in the end. And so some years we have to take most of the crop off. In 2010, instead of harvesting around 230 tons, we harvested 80. It was a cold year. It stayed cold the whole year. Now, if you drink those 2010 wines, they're lovely. The other thing I'd say about the Okanagan is, as much as we're in a northern climate, for some reason, it seems each season's very different, but we also are always able to ripen fruit. So, you know, I mean, it's hard to say. I actually do think that the 2020 harvest is going to be,
Yes.
the wines are going to be spectacular. They're going to
Yes.
be spectacular.
I've heard that, and I'm hearing that a lot. So we'll step back to 2019 then, just because we can.
Nice. And we have one more question.
Oh,
From Debbie. She said she enjoyed an orange wine at the Vanilla Pod in 2020 and is wondering if she can get her hands on a case of that.
I can jump in there. It's a very, very small production, only for the restaurant.
So if Debbie visited the restaurant this year, could she have a glass?
You absolutely, yes.
So Debbie, you know what you're doing next. Booking into the Naramata Inn and heading up to Poplar Grove.
Yeah, go talk to a fellow named Michael Ziff at the restaurant. He will set you up.
Nice. Thank you.
all right. So Viognier 2019. Let's talk a little bit about this beautiful bottle.
Yeah. This is from the Holler family's Haynes Creek Vineyard in Osoyoos, which is down on the east side of Osoyoos Lake, below Anarchist Summit, if you've ever taken the number 3 out towards the Kootenays. Very hot. It's very hot down there. There's at least a 4 to 5 degree difference every year in the hot point of the summer. And so we can ripen something like this, a Rhone varietal like Viognier, and get a lot of ripeness on this fruit. The Holler family picked that vineyard so that we could plant all of our big reds there. We have Viognier and the Chardonnay, I think, pardon me, the Chardonnay is planted in a cooler spot of that same vineyard. And you get quite a bit of difference because we have Viognier on the Naramata Bench, and you don't really get the tropical fruit that you get, you know, that really ripe apricot and melon out of the Vio from the Osoyoos vineyard. So this is something that is nearly 100% from that Haynes Creek vineyard.
That's incredible. It's like single vineyard Viognier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't advertise it, but it is.
That's very important because maybe for people who don't know, there is microclimate, micro quality to that can be so specific, and elevating the wine as well. It's just in the Okanagan in Canada, we do not have a cru system, whereas in Europe, in France, especially in Burgundy and other places, we do, you know, there are crus, which, you know, then suddenly this bottle is twice the price. So
on the note of Viognier, if I may interrupt on behalf of our attendees, we have a question about Viogner's distinctive flavor. They have been drinking Viognier from Northern California, and they're finding BC's Viognier, a little bit muted, and just wondering if that's done on purpose to appeal to the masses, or is it the region, varying conditions unique to the Kelowna Valley, Okanagan Valley?
I can't speak for everyone, but we try to extract as every possible iota of flavor out of those grapes that we can. And really it depends on the season and it depends on your location.
I think maybe California might be a little bit hotter and they might be getting a little bit more sugar levels there. So that could be a perceived flavor difference. Just a thought.
It could also be that they have less natural acid in the wine, you know, because they have those hot falls, whereas we have cold falls.
Yeah.
And so the grapes maintain their acidity.
Which sort of, yeah, okay.
So I think that might be part of it. Stefan, isn't it true though that you can very much change the flavor and the texture of Viognier by leaving it a long time on the skins, which we don't do, but that's because of the style of wine that we want, which is, you know, nice acidic backbone, fruit forward, luscious mouthfeel. You know, really that's what we're looking for. And we want it dry. So Stefan, you know, some of those Viogniers I've tasted from Europe, they're heavy, and they actually have quite a few tannins in them as well.
Yeah, Viognier has quite a bit of tannin in the skin. And of course, we do a small amount of Syrah Viognier co-fermentation, and the tannins from those Viognier skins really help lift up the final blend of a red wine as well. Yeah, in terms of our Viognier, I mean, we've played around down south there. Down south is what I call a Soyuz.
Yeah, not down South California.
No. Down south is the Soyuz, up north is here in Penticton, and Kelowna is somewhere you just don't go. But a lot of it has to do with your vineyard management. A lot of it has to do with fruit exposure, when you remove the leaves for fruit exposure. And something, I mean, we're getting quite a bit more consistent now over the years. And Tony's son, Matt, runs our Soyuz vineyard. And I think 2019, 2020, he had it pretty dialed in on our canopy management.
And at 808 cases, you're not making a whole heck of a lot of Viognier. This is very precise. To your point, maybe, Dr. Holler, this is a style you're going for. Yeah.
You know, if you had to talk about the style we go for in every one of our wines, red and white, it's really simple. Well-balanced wine, lots of acidity, fruit forward, great mouthfeel, and the other thing that's important is a refreshing mouthfeel. And you know, when we talked about Viognier, some of those heavy Viogniers, they go into my mouth and I go, gosh, I don't know if I want to swallow this, right?
Well, you've got a nice recommendation for a food pairing there, which I think speaks to having some refreshing acidity.
Yeah, the prawn toast is very, very fatty usually. It's sometimes with a little soy sauce as well, I find, and I think the Viognier would just make that so refreshing with that great acidity. Oh, I'm hungry.
And I had to look up furikake, and it's a rice seasoning. I had no idea.
Rice seasoning, people, with white soy ponzu, which is a creamy white flavored sauce, right? It's not spicy. It's
has a little bit of seaweed and umami, very umami, I would say. Karen is letting us know that she has ordered the wines, and she's going to do a garlic roast chicken with roast potatoes and a salad with mustard vinaigrette. And she said she's inviting us all for dinner. Oh wait, no, that wasn't part of it.
Oh, what a tease.
We'll accept the invitation.
Yeah. All right. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is the wine that I am sipping. It's quite lovely, I have to admit. I'm enamored. It could be with food or without. Anyway, Stefan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, rosé started actually as a very small side production. We typically with our red wines, we'll bleed at crush, we'll bleed off a certain portion of the juice. It's called saignée in French. And for some wineries, that's just a waste product, but we would then ferment it like a white wine and turn it into a lovely rosé. We made it mainly for our new patio at the winery there. And the staff, I think, consumed the majority of it, actually. But we have now grown this SKU because it's been so popular. So we now have some vineyards that we will pull some. This one, it changes every year for our rosé. Some years it's Malbec dominant, and this year it's actually Merlot dominant by a little bit. But we have some vineyard blocks that are never, you know, they're in a very good year in a 2015, they can make a great red wine. But if they're only going to make an okay red wine, I have the liberty to pull those and to make rosé out of them. And so then I literally pull black grapes and crush, destem and crush them just like a white wine and treat them like that. And then you end up with this, this bright, you know, very pale salmon colored wine. The story I always tell is that this is the most collaborative wine that we make. So I bring this up to all of our staff. I'm in a separate building from the rest of Poplar Grove, and they let me come in if I bring rosé samples. And we will put together, they will tell me, you know, this color is too dark, this color is too light, it needs more acid. And I basically just keep bringing blends and samples up until they tell me it's correct. And these are people that have very strong opinions about rosé, and they're right, because we've found we sell out of this wine every year. It's made by rosé lovers.
And it comes in a beautiful bottle, unlike the other bottles. It's not a Burgundy bottle, it's not a Bordeaux bottle, it's more like an Alsatian flute, which I think is fantastic. So speaking to a stylistic, you know, tendency. 1,700 cases made, so, you know, double Viognier, but we're gonna rosé every day. Isn't that how it goes, people? Like, isn't
Rosé all day, every day. The good
It's
thing about the Alsatian bottles too is that if you have one of those new fridges, they fit in the bottom where the pizza boxes and the egg cartons go, because they're just that small. So I had somebody ask me today, well, how do I fit my wines in? I don't have room. I said, buy Alsatian or buy Poplar Grove Rosé. It'll fit right in.
There you go.
79, 90. Oh, look at that math. You're right. Good Lord. What happened there?
That's okay. Did we do something right?
No, it was us.
What's up? Tell me.
Joey caught it.
A question about
Joey.
cellaring time.
The question below there. No, we were making, I think, 104%. So, well, that's what we like to do. We like to give 104%.
Or why not? Why not? Crispy skin salmon, oyster cream sauce, kohlrabi, apple, and cured roe. Anybody hungry? Have you tried this, Dr. Holler, with the?
I have, and it's absolutely scrumptious. Our chef is, you know, from a sort of seafood stand. He is probably one of the best seafood chefs I've ever dined with. And so when you're up here, make sure you try the fish dishes because they're all incredible.
So shall we move along then? We're going to talk about barrels. Aha.
That is over there. It doesn't really help you, but that's that's my assistant, Dan Marshall. He's in there probably sampling.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah, we're, as a growing winery now, our red production grows with us here. And so we're now up to about 900 French oak barrels in that barrel hall. You can see we go typically 5 high, 2, 4, well, 6 high occasionally. I gotta be careful on my math now here, but 6 high occasionally. And this is basically a full-time job for 2 people, not Dan and myself, but we have cellar staff who bring those barrels down. They empty the contents by vineyard and varietal into tanks, clean the barrels, fill them back up, put them back in the barrel hull. And this happens basically now throughout the year because we have so many. We're just finishing up our 2020s right now. So that's a big part of our winemaking. Our Poplar Grove red wine program is very traditional. We pick ripe fruit at the right time. It's a clean fermentation. It goes into good cooperage. It's very expensive. We're 850 euros per barrel now, plus shipping.
Wow.
Which adds up. And we do we're at about a 20 to 25% turnover on the barrels. So we don't keep them more than 6 to 7 years because they're in for 18 to 20 months per barrel. Oh, and I see someone asking about cellaring time with the rosé. I say drink it.
Drink it.
Yeah, it's not made to cellar. It's wine made for drinking.
So to your point about the barrels, what 800 euros times what 1.5 for Canadian dollars, and you've got, it's a very expensive proposition. I think this speaks to a dedication to quality, to have this kind of a room. I'm curious, have you seen a shift from white wines then to red wine preferences in the development of Poplar Grove over time?
No.
I'm also going to interject with a question about whether it's French or American oak, and why do you prefer French? So I'll add that to Barb's question from Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Well, French oak has, I should be careful here because American oak has actually gotten a lot better over the years. So part of this, it's just a lot easier to say we use 100% French oak, and that is part of it. But really the French oak comes from all of those old Napoleonic forests in the center of France that they were managed for building ships. And of course now you're taking down 100-year-old trees, aging them for 3 years as planks before turning them into barrels. And the quality is just so much higher. And as I said, there are American oak producers who are doing much better, but typically the French oak has a much tighter pore structure. It has less overall impact. It's a very subtle impact with the vanilla and the tobacco that you get, as well as the tannin. A newer oak barrel actually adds a lot of wood tannin to a wine that helps immensely with the red wine development and aging.
It's quite a mark of quality and standards to say our cooperage is all, or our barrel room is all French. And there are many producers and forests and all of that. So when they come for a tour of the winery, they will get the full meal deal. Yeah.
They will. And I mean, American oak would certainly be a big savings, but we have a consistent style, and that's very important to us too. We're not going to make any big changes.
There's a couple more questions that are firing down the galley here. Apparently somebody is very excited about the hotel that's going to be ready for visitors. And then there is also screw top versus cork. So these are big subjects. I don't know if we want to continue on and handle that after, but I'll leave that up to you.
I can be real quick on screw cap and cork, and maybe Tony can give a quick little blurb on the hotel. But
thank you.
We will be actually moving to screw cap for our CSM. So our 2019 CSM will be under screw cap. Cork, again, very traditional. We're not going to make any big changes on our red wine lineup. And down there, cork is also very expensive. Our Legacy gets what's 54 mil cork. They're about $1.20 a piece. And all the other brands are a 49 mil cork. So the 54 mil cork just helps with your long-term aging.
Yeah, very good.
In terms of our future plans for a boutique hotel on site, we are stuck in bureaucracy right now, and that's just one of those things that happen. But we will prevail.
In the meantime, how about glamping? Can we bring our tents and just do it?
We've got a very
Barb.
nice lawn.
Barb, you're really starting things off on the wrong foot
I
here.
know. Let's not zip. We're not going to talk about that.
There are many accommodations on the Naramata Bench in the city of Penticton that would be lovely to stay, and
There
it would
you
be
go.
an easy drive out to Poplar Grove, or you could take one of the valley's premier wine tours, and they would chasse you there in no time.
There you go. All right. So transition from whites to reds. We have the introduction of oak and oak aging. Is there an average amount of time that you age the reds, or does it vary?
It does vary with the varietal. The Syrah comes out at about month 12 and goes to bottle earlier because we don't want the fruit to disappear. And we've been doing that now for a few years. With most of our Bordeaux reds, they can handle the longer aging.
Yeah.
And so they're in for 20 months.
So
yeah.
Awesome. So we've got benchmark 2014. Look at that. This is fantastic. So this is going to have some age. It's going to be maybe have a little bit of a garnet rim. You've got a fantastic classic blend, Bordeaux-esque. And you want to speak to 734 cases, not a lot.
So we have a very, I bet that a lot of people here are a part of the wine club, but we have a very active wine club, and we take it very seriously. So we're always trying to give them unique and interesting wines. The benchmark is a little homage to the founders of Poplar Grove, Ian and Gita Sutherland, and they had a little block of Merlot called Benchmark on the vineyard at the old Poplar Grove site. So we kept Benchmark for this wine, which is 100% Naramata Bench fruit. 2014, there was no sub-GI. You couldn't call it Naramata Bench, and by the regulations, you couldn't even, I don't think I could mention it on the back label even. Honestly, I forget. But that's what we do. We treat it just like any other sub-GI, which has to be 95% from that region. So the Cabernet Sauvignon comes from a Soyuz, and we're allowed to do that. We're allowed the 5%, and we do that not to boost the volume, but we do that because it makes the wine better. And this is what we always do with the wines. If the blend makes the wine better, we will do it. You're allowed with varietal, you're allowed 85% per BC VQA rules. So if sometimes our Chardonnay will be 100%, or for example, our Cabernet Franc may have some Malbec in it. If it makes the wine better, we will do it. And that's just something that we do. We want to make sure we make the best wine possible.
I think you're very lucky in that situation. I remember one winery coming out, and I thought that perhaps their blend just came together because that's all they could find at the time. It really, honestly seemed to me to be that way. And then when you see this level of precision in the blends, it's nice to see, and you're very lucky that you have access to those grapes and know how to use them as you are.
We also are very lucky that we have a small production of a second label, Monster Vineyards, that if any of our fruit or wine does not make the levels of Poplar Grove, we can downgrade it to the Monster Vineyard lineup, which are some great wines and very good value, but it's an excellent insurance policy to make sure that all of our Poplar Grove wines are as good as they can be.
We have a question about decanting, and I know we're on the benchmark right now, but we're getting to the legacy and the other ones. How do you feel about that? And should they decant? Is it just fancy, or is it going to open up that way?
Can't hurt.
Yeah, as a general rule, and older wines typically don't need decanting.
Right.
Some can. Younger wines, I always decant. And, when we get to legacy, the current legacy in the market is the 16. That is a young wine. And what I do, if I'm going to serve the 16, which I typically wouldn't do, I'd go back to a 2010 legacy or an earlier legacy. But if I serve the 2016, I would decant it in the morning. Okay, so I would get, 8 o'clock in the morning before I go off to work. I'd single decant it or double decant it, pour the wine back in the bottle, put the cork in, knowing that by dinner it will be perfect. So that's just a trick that I use for younger wines, where I open them up in the morning, decant them back in the bottle, cork goes back on, boom, they are ready at dinner time.
And Tony, what is the vintage currently in the market for, like, if somebody was just picking up a Legacy right now?
16.
16. Okay.
Yeah. Remember, with Legacy, we carry the Legacy in our cellars for an extra year, just because we think that that's what it needs to be ready to drink. So all our red wines are meant, if you want to drink them now, great. But these wines are going to last, we're drinking 1998 Legacy, which used to be called Reserve, and it's phenomenal. So here you got a 23-year-old wine, if my math is correct, and still drinking beautifully. Now, I don't recommend people keep the wines that long, but all our red wines, whether it's the Syrah or Legacy or any of these red wines, they're gonna easily be beautiful in the first 10 years and not deteriorate. They might not improve after they're 10 years old, or maybe slightly, but they're going to last a long, long time.
Yeah, good backbone, good structure.
Nice. Thank you.
Nice tannins. All right, so anybody ready for a double patty beef burger, smoked bacon, cheddar, sweet pickles on a milk bun with fries?
Yeah,
me too.
If you're up here, you definitely should have that burger for lunch.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd point out is that burger goes very well with Legacy.
There you go. Bottle of Legacy, please. All right, Stefan, you want to speak a little bit to the benchmark 2014? It was part of the bottle offer, and
14. Wow. Going back to that, I think, again, very similar to the 20 vintage. It's not a big heat year. Again, no smoke. We didn't have floods back then, not like we had, for what, 16, 17.
And fires.
And fires, yeah. Yeah. Benchmark, the Naramata Bench fruit tends to be a heavier structured wine than from further down south. And I've got some benchmark, I think 2010, or actually I know in this case, 2010 was the first year that we made it. And I've been dipping into my very last case of 2010, and it holds up very well.
Nice. It's not available anywhere except exclusively from the wine club.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 734 cases. Beautiful, beautiful. Any questions on this bottle? We'll move along. We will come to Syrah.
Syrah. So if you're, I've noticed, I guess I should say, that your cellar tells you what you like best, and I'm always out of Syrah. So I like this wine. It just goes with everything. This is it's better than that, but it's a Tuesday night barbecue. You can have it with hamburgers. It's not overpowering. It grows very well. The vineyard crew hates Syrah because it really is a difficult grape to manage, or a difficult vine. It likes to die. It likes to put out 40-foot shoots. It likes to tangle up the tractors as they drive by. But it also makes a very beautiful wine. And I think from Osoyoos, this is one of our better varietals. 95% Syrah. One of the things that we do with our Syrah is, I think I mentioned earlier, we do a bit of co-fermentation with Viognier. Now, we like to try to pick them, try to manage our pick dates so that we can get the Viognier and the Syrah close to the same time, because of course you can't really keep them. You have to process them pretty soon after you get them. And then what we do is we actually take the Viognier, we soft press it, so the juice goes to the white wine, and then we take those very sloppy skins and we throw them in with the Syrah fermentation. And it's called co-fermentation. The tannins from the Viognier are very helpful to help set the color of the Syrah. And also give a little background note of the apricot that you get from the Syrah, which disappears over time as the wine ages, but you still keep the texture, which is very good. And we were really happy in 2016 because we'd only ever really been about 800 to 900 cases for many years before that. So we have 1,400 cases here of the 16 that I think is actually almost sold out now.
That's amazing. Talk about a perfect pairing, classic Rhone pairing with an aged duck breast, sprouted rye berries, roasted almond and mint. Who's had this? Somebody's had this. Dr. Holler, have you tasted this in the restaurant?
I love duck, and
Yeah.
I think there's no wine that goes better with duck than Syrah. And I'm with Stefan. I just love the Syrah. And you know, the Okanagan Valley, the South Okanagan Valley, there's a number of very good Syrah producers, and we're getting an international reputation with Syrah and with Cabernet Franc as a place that does it really well. We entered this Syrah into the Decanter Wine Awards in London, and one of the judges from Paris sent us an email, said, send me 8 cases of that Syrah. That Syrah is as good a Syrah as I've ever had anywhere in the world, right? So,
That's awesome.
so you know, that tells you something when, you know, someone who, you know, has access to the best Northern Rhone Syrahs, tastes our Syrah and goes, I want 8 cases of it.
Well, and Northern Rhone Syrah at $100 a bottle is, you know, a bit of a tough go. We have our backyard, and how lucky are we, right?
And Tony, you had mentioned earlier that a couple of the vineyards had been suffering a bit because Syrah, it does die off in the winter. It's a bit of a difficult one. So are there, and Stefan, are there any practices that you've been things that you've been doing in the vineyard to keep that Syrah alive?
Yeah, with Syrah, it has what people refer to as Syrah decline disease. And what happens is a perfectly healthy plant filled with fruit dies in the middle of the summer. Like, I mean, it doesn't even make sense, right? It doesn't have any stress or anything. And they think it's a virus, and it happens to Syrah all over the world. We recently learned that there is a clone of Syrah that seems to not do this. So we've recently ordered, I kept a few thousand plants of that Syrah. So we'll see if that works. But it's a problem from a farming standpoint. A farming Syrah is difficult. Let's just say that. But for me, you know, I mean, the suggestion was, let's pull out all our Syrah and plant Cabernet Franc. And I said, no, we're not doing that. That Syrah is too delicious, right? We're not doing that. We're gonna persist.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So we're jumping from the vineyards to a question from Scott about fermentation. With your you're fermenting in stainless steel tanks. Are you using other fermentation vessels? And I think perhaps he's alluding to some of the concrete tanks and things that are being used.
In the future, we're going to play with a bit of concrete. Currently, I'm trying to show you here my pride and joy. Those are, you can see the top of them though. Those are 6,000 liter reverse conical tanks. Those are my favorite red wine fermenters by far. And only the best grapes go in there. So we're very picky.
And those are stainless steel, are they?
All stainless steel currently, yes. We've played a little bit with barrel fermentations in 225 liter barrels, but honestly, for the amount of work that it was, we didn't see a great benefit to it. Yeah, so we'll see in the future. I mean, that's something down the road. And then also, I also see Syrah is very peppery. Typically, if you're tasting a lot of white pepper, those grapes were picked a bit early. Black pepper is more of your ripe Syrah flavor.
Yes.
And there's also a question here about the wine diamonds they're saying on the cork. You see that there?
We store our red wines upside down. during aging, because we do hold them back a year after bottling before release. And depending on the wine, and typically we get more from the Naramata Bench than we do from Osoyoos, but we do tend to get a potassium or bitartrate settling out there. We don't cold stabilize our reds. It's nothing that we've worried about too much. We cold stabilize our white wines because it's so much more visible, but that is something that we're going to look at. We actually have a program where we're keeping 1,500 bottles of our Legacy, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc for 10 years. And Tony was good enough to invest in some wine cages. So we have 500 bottle wine cages starting in 2014 that we put 1,500 bottles aside that will be released in either, I guess, 2024 or 2025 to the wine club. And the idea there is in the cages is that they lie on their side. The problem with putting the bottles upside down is those crystals do stick to the cork, which annoys me.
But the crystals aren't harmful.
Not at all, no.
They can't hurt you. It's
No.
tartrate. Yeah.
In
It's
fact, they're very
innocuous.
expensive.
Yes. So scrape them off the cork, send them back.
And then there's also a bit of a question about glasses, and I think I don't know how many glasses everybody could have. Riedel has a really great selection. I tend to break the more delicate ones every time I try to polish them. So yeah.
Well, a very good friend of mine who runs Le Crocodile restaurant in Vancouver told me, he said, those people from Riedel, they have changed my business.
Yeah.
I used to have a white wine glass, a champagne glass, and a red wine glass. Now I have 10 or 12 different types of glasses. As he said, it's for a restaurateur, it's tough because you have to store them all, you have to have space, all that stuff. You know, I personally drink from a red wine glass and a white wine glass, and I have an excellent selection of glasses, but my go-to glass, is a red wine glass and a white wine glass, depending on drinking red or white wine. I think you can get crazy about the glasses, by the way. Oh my God, can you spend money on glasses?
Yes, and then you can break them. So you spend money on it and then you break them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I broke a $30 glass just trying to polish it the other day, so forget it.
Heartbreaking. But if anybody has a recommendation, we'd love to hear it. So definitely. So I put Cabernet Franc 2017 up on the screen here. 87% Cab Franc, 8% Malbec, 3% Merlot, 2% Cabernet Sauvignon. What's up? What's up here?
Well, again, by VQA standards, you have to be 85% varietal to call it Cabernet Franc. Otherwise, it becomes a Meritage or something else. But again, so here, 87% Cabernet Franc. That Cabernet Franc comes from our Osoyoos vineyard again. We have some Cabernet Franc planted in Penticton on the Naramata Bench, but that is a single vineyard bottling that goes to our club exclusively. And it's probably, I think it's one of our best wines, actually. A small production. We've used some Malbec here to fatten out the body, the mid palate, and the Cab Sauv comes from some of our press fractions that we've used to help with the tannin structure. So this is the wine that I actually lived in the Poplar Grove residence, the old Poplar Grove residence in 2003, and we drank a fair bit of this when I lived there. And I loved it. That's why I was so happy to be able to get in with this winery.
So grilled strip loin, Parisian gnocchi roasted. I mean, good heavens, this is like the perfect pairing, is it not? What do we say about Cab Franc compared to Cabernet Sauvignon? Cab Franc, a bit more fruit, a bit more.
Yeah, a little. It's a little
easier drinking.
Yep, it's a more elegant wine. It's definitely a more elegant wine than our Cabernet Sauvignon, and we're seeing our Cabernet Sauvignon improve in the vineyards from Osoyoos. So you're going to see 2014, we made a Cab Sauv. 2019, we're going to put a blend together. Very different wines though. So more elegant, more lifted. It's a little more red fruit. I mean, you get the black currant, but it's a little more strawberry. You also get a bit more of the dried herb, which I love on the Cabernet Franc. Sort of almost a tea leaf, I find personally.
Yeah, delicious. All right. So any questions on Cab Franc? Shall we move along? 1,500. So 1,600 cases. You're very bullish on Cab Franc. We're
Oh,
excited about that. And it's a steady Eddie in the portfolio. And thank you.
Absolutely. And again, this is now us being able, it used to be something that was sold almost exclusively through the tasting room and wine club. Now we have enough that you're going to see this in Alberta. You're going to see a little bit shipped to your door in Manitoba, hopefully.
Right. Right.
Which is great, because there's nothing that makes me happier than seeing wines roll out the door. It really does. And I was going to mention this in the Pinot Gris, but one of the liquor store managers in Vancouver mentioned that our Pinot Gris is the top selling white. And I thought, great, top selling BC white. That's amazing. But no, he said we were the top selling white wine from the Alberni liquor store, which is, I mean, that beats Yellowtail. That beats all that garbage. And it's actually a wine that I think is very good.
Yeah. And Cab Franc from BC, this is becoming a reputable conversation. Cab Franc is doing well. We have lots of good Cab Franc producers, again, helping to build up that reputation for, like you said, Dr. Holler, Syrah, Cab Franc, maybe, other varietals, the white ones that we won't talk about, but yeah. All right, so next we're moving on to oh, wait. Did I miss one? I did not. We are at the end. Oh no. Oh no. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end. Okay, I'm sorry, but I didn't realize.
I'm just going to interrupt and tell you a little Cab Franc story from Poplar Grove, because this is well before I ever thought I'd be in the wine business. I, have an extensive wine cellar, so I'm a wine nut already. But I went fishing at a fly fishing resort at the Douglas Lake Ranch. And this would be in the early 2000s, well before we even thought about buying a winery or doing anything. And at that ranch, they had a terrible wine list. And I said to the waiter, I said, "Don't you have any other wines?" And he said, "Well, we've got a cupboard where we have some older wines there, and I just can't vouch for them. I can't vouch for them." But I said, "Okay, where's the cupboard? I want to go in there." And they had 1997 Poplar Grove Cabernet Franc. Now, the guy said the place doesn't get heated in the winter and it doesn't get cooled in the summer, so the wines are not properly cared for. I'm telling you that Poplar Grove Cabernet Franc was so spectacular, and I'll never forget that experience of tasting that Cab Franc. And that's before I ever knew Ian or knew anything at all. And Ian was making very nice red wines, so we obviously carried on that tradition, and I would argue that our wines are even better than they were originally.
So I think we could say perhaps this was the impetus for the Poplar Grove purchase even. Exactly.
It was certainly part of it.
Yeah.
You remember that razor commercial where the guy goes, "I love the razor so much I bought the company." It's a bit like that.
I actually worked for Victor Kayam. So
did you? Oh my God.
So that's very funny that you would say that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to mention that these are the bottles that are available until midnight tonight. Good Wine Gal offer on the Poplar Grove website. 6 bottles and 12. So, this is your chance. Some of these bottles are exclusive if you are not in the wine club. If you are in the wine club, you have a special price. So, and Cassandra, let's keep going. So, ladies and gentlemen, we actually are approaching our 1 hour, and I don't want to keep people longer than they were planning. So,
one more question.
I'm not going to hang up. But I am going to say, so if anyone would like to leave, please don't feel that we would be offended. You are welcome to leave when you are ready. We are going to do some questions and answers. And then at the end, we are going to hang out and sip more wine as people wish. So Cassandra, take it away.
I'm just looking at a couple of the questions that are coming in. The meaning behind the logo.
the logo was created by an artist in London, and it is looking at a poplar tree from above. So looking down from above, and that's where the logo came from. And obviously, we love that logo. That logo is never going to change, you guys.
I like that, and it's classic and classy. I'm gonna go back a little bit and remember when I first visited the winery before you owned it, and they were one of the first wineries. Ian was jumping around on the barrels and showing me things. It was very small, and he set the pace by not releasing the wines before their time. Like he almost went broke doing it, but he had that philosophy. And that's the thing that a lot of wineries, I think, do, is they release the wine before their time. And you've managed to make it a point not to.
You know, I'm very sympathetic to a lot of the wineries because they're run on shoestring budgets, and they need to have that cash flow or else they don't stay in business. And I'm very sympathetic to it, but to be perfectly honest, it's not the best way to make wine, right? And the consumer experience is not the best. And so you know, our philosophy is don't put the wine into the marketplace until it's ready to drink, because a year makes a big difference.
So I've stopped the share, and we can continue with the discussions. So
Yeah, I can go back to, there's a CSM question there. CSM is actually a little takeoff on GSM from Australia, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. So we decided to do a CSM, Cabernet, Merlot, Syrah, or Cabernet, Syrah, Merlot. And Cabernet could be Franc or Sauvignon. We don't judge.
we don't judge.
Yeah.
We're not judging here. Any other questions coming up for us?
An approach to climate change, that's a big question. That could be a dissertation, but
What are we noticing? What are we noticing? Are we harvesting earlier? Are we...
Thanks for that question, because it's a very interesting thing. I think in many ways the Okanagan, you know, it's been hard for people to determine that there's been significant climate change here. And probably it's because we're in this valley, you know, northern sort of place you can grow grapes. What we've seen is a lot more variability in the weather. So it you know, for me to go, oh yeah, it's a lot hotter than it used to be. I grew up here in the 60s, and we had super hot weather then as well. So we're actually, though, you know, we have this benefit of this beautiful lake, and remember that it acts as the great equalizer of temperature, right? In the winter, it warms us up. In the summer, it cools us down. And so I think, you know, talking about climate change, you know, the things we're doing are more, you know, what I would call socially responsible things with climate change. Like, I think people know that about 75% of our power consumption comes from solar panels on our production facility. Here at the winery, our patio is covered by what's called the translucent solar panel roof, right? Which you can see through it, you know, light comes through. And so, you know, in our parking lot, you can take your electric car and get it charged while you're doing a tasting or having lunch. So we're kind of focusing on those sorts of things because we believe that everyone should be doing these sorts of things. They're just responsible to do.
And sustainability for you has always been something in the vineyards and in the restaurant. And I'm just going to flash forward to a couple questions here. There's a question about forest fires. Don't think that's prevalent right now. I'm sure it's happened in the past. But there was also a question about moving away from the glass bottle top on the rosé. Quickly before that, what are the winery opening hours for May?
Oh, is there for Lori? What do we got? 11 to 5?
Yeah, 11 to 5 in the fall, winter, and spring. Summer is 11 to 8. 7 days a week for tastings. Make a booking. Restaurant. Well, you know, if I could get mine delivered. Oh, just kidding.
And so then we can go back to the glass bottle top on the rosé, which I never saw, but there was one. And why did you move away?
Well, it's a pain in the
From
ass.
Joey.
So we're going to continue with a small production of it, but we're just not set up to do it properly. That's the biggest problem. So we're going to do a small amount of what we call our Lakeview Rosé, which is a single vineyard rosé. Will go in that fancy bottle. It actually just landed, Tony, for interest in Port of Vancouver today, so we're going to be able to get them up soon.
Awesome.
Yeah, they come from Italy. But no, I think we did too many of it for our 2017 vintage or 2018.
I think it's a difficult situation with bottling, even when you're in a more populated area, and it's a different type of bottle. So you would have to have somebody come in and help you with that bottling or take that elsewhere.
The equipment necessary for our bottling system was ungodly expensive. Just for that one bottle, you had to have all the specialized equipment.
Tony, was it a
retrofitted
vanity
to a bottling
project?
line.
It was
Well,
a vanity project.
In my humble opinion, Vinlock, is this what we're talking about, the glass
Yeah,
stopper?
Vinlock,
Yeah.
exactly.
So in my humble opinion, it is a cachet. It's a very expensive proposition, but it does add an elegance to a wine. But in the end, I find, and perhaps everyone is finding, that to open is difficult as a sommelier at a table or even at home. My mother got quite confused that she thought this was the new stopper, which it doesn't function as a stopper. So, you know, the reality of it is like, it's nice, it's pretty, it's elegant, it's lovely.
Yeah, I can tell you on my end, if the machine didn't line up properly, the bottles would shatter. Then you have to discard every bottle that's on the line, and it took us a week to do. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if there's any more questions, but I did do a bit of a poll, and I'm happy to share the poll with our audience, and they get to answer 4 questions, and it's kind of like, it's not too tricky, but it's kind of tricky. So any more questions, Cassandra?
I have one more.
Okay.
If it's a cold few weeks, such as -20, what happens to the vineyards and vines? Do you protect them in any way, or do they die off?
I can speak to that, Stefan, if you want.
Thank you.
It's all about how quickly temperatures change. Stefan, you remember in 2009, we had -8 degrees or -9 degrees for a week, and it was a disaster. The trunks of the vines split. We had all the young plants were killed, all that sort of stuff. Now, -9 isn't particularly cold, but on beginning of October, it's ungodly cold. So typically the vines go to sleep slowly, okay? And we follow what we call bud hardiness, and we judge bud hardiness in a scientific way, and we get these reports. The buds are now hardy to -8, -12. -20 is not a terrible thing in the winter for us. In fact, we had -20 this winter, and we had no bud death, nothing. But that's because the vines had hardened off slowly coming into the winter. So it was almost, I would say, Stefan, an ideal winter for the vineyards.
Yeah, it was good. The Summerland Research Station here, which is a Government of Canada research station, puts out monthly or bi-weekly, actually, through the winter, bud hardiness reports. And we were good down to -24 this year, they said. Yeah. I believe we only got to -20, -21. So you know, touch wood, we will
Yeah.
see. I think we're looking good in the vineyards this year. We had quite a bit of winter damage 2018. Our Pinot Gris production was down 20-25% actually because of winter kill.
So it's more about the temperature variance
It's
rather
the,
like it
it's
just
the
just
low
as if somebody
temperature.
threw you into ice. You'd kind of be a little mad too.
Yeah. Well, the vines have to be properly put to sleep. And then if they're not, if they're still fairly green, full of liquid, that liquid, it's going to crystallize, it's going to kill the cell walls, and you're going to have a lot of death.
Right.
This is, yeah.
Thank you. I think that we've got most of our questions. So Barb, could
we
you
do a
tell us
poll?
what
Ooh, I'm
little
so
trivia
excited.
we have now?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, get ready. This is very exciting. I'm going to launch a poll, and you have 4 questions. You answer. It'll come up on the screen. It's a click. I'm launching the first one. What year did the Hollers buy Poplar Grove?
Can I play?
Everyone can play. This is a game. This is
How do you
trivia.
answer it though?
It's a click. I think you get to click on the one you think is the right answer.
I guess I'd be cheating though.
Oh, you go ahead, Tony.
I won't play.
Go ahead. We know. Disclaimer. Tony owns it.
So I'm
might
getting
have
close
forgotten.
to ending the poll. We've got 75% have voted. So if you'd like to vote, please go ahead and vote. I will hold on for a few more seconds so that if everybody wants to get in and vote, we're at 80%. Let's keep going. Let's get to 100. It's probably not going to happen, but we'll get close. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have an answer for you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to end the poll. I'm ending the poll now. I'm ending the poll, and now I'm going to share the results. So there you go. Does everybody see the results? Good guesses on everyone's part. Can you see it? Can everyone see?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. All right. I'm going to stop the share now. So we know the answer was 2007. Question number 2. What is their most popular wine? I think this is kind of a gimme, but go ahead, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Well, there's going to
do. Should we have the music?
It's just fun, you know. I think trivia is interesting. So we're getting close to the 85%. I'm going to hold out for a few more seconds.
People are voting on the fact that they think that should be the most popular one.
I think this is true. So I'm actually going to end the poll now. Anybody else? Anybody else? I'm going to end the poll now. So I'm going to share the results. So I think what some people might be saying is, while this might be the most popular wine, this is my most popular wine.
Right.
How's that? Yes, exactly. I like it. All right, got a couple more. So next question. What is the name of Stefan's black dog? Mutt, Merlot, Scout, or Boy? Now
Paige has a dog here.
A Peanut. Hey, Peanut.
I forgot Peanut. I'm so sorry. See, this was all about how well do you know Poplar Grove? Look, I love it. So we're at 58%, 61%. I didn't put I don't know. So if you don't vote, it's okay.
I see the Thorson dog there as well. And a fantastic Icelandic name, by the way.
Was that Mutt? All right, I'm going to end the poll. I'm ending the poll. I'm going to share the results. Look at that. People actually, the majority actually knew the name of the dog. So this is fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to stop the share. One final question. The winery is open year-round, true or false?
Do.
There's a hesitation. Look it, there's a hesitation. And we are at 80%, ladies and gents.
I love the participation. Keep it coming, people.
Okay, I'm going to share the results.
It's 100%.
So just so everyone knows, it is open year round. That might be a surprise. It certainly is a surprise to me. I hope they have accommodation soon, because in the winter, I might even just go up and hang out there because the food's so good and the wine's so delicious. All right. Well, at this point, I can honestly say it's been my total pleasure to have Dr. Holler, Stefan, Lori, Cassandra, and all of this lovely wine club, as well as my community here today celebrating BC Wine Wednesday. We are enamored with our backyard. How lucky are we to live in beautiful British Columbia and to continue to watch the growth, the emerging industry that's making our lives better, making our lives tasty, giving us hope. All I can say is thank you to everyone who attended today. Thank you to Dr. Holler, to Stefan and Lori, and all the folks at Poplar Grove who got behind this 104%. What was that number? And, we look forward to seeing you all in the future up at the winery, online, celebrating BC's bounty. And thank you, Poplar
And
Grove.
everybody on the chat is right back at you, Barb. So there's too much going on to have me read everything out again. But so much love to Poplar Grove, so much love to you, Barb. And from my point of view, spectacular job. Another amazing BC Wine Wednesday, but this has been a blowout. We've never seen so many people here. So obviously there's something special going on. So I'm going to stop the share. We have now come to the end of our session. If anyone would like to stay on after, you are more than welcome to. And we're just going to keep chatting about wine.